everybody. Welcome to another episode of What You Doing podcast. My name is Matt. Today I'm chatting with George Bickers from 3 Sales Studios, talking about their debut game, Mappa Mundi, the Exploration and Ecology RPG. This was a fantastic time. I just finished watching it back for editing. We talked a long time. You might notice that this is a 2-part episode. I split it up into 2 parts, not due to length, but just due to listenability. Part 1 was a lot of talking about how 3 Sales was doing marketing for Mappa Mundi, them doing con appearances, that sort of thing. And part 2 is going to be talking a lot about, more specifically and directly about the game, design ideas, mechanics, that sort of thing. So while I definitely recommend you listen to both parts because I think both parts are full of interesting information and insight from George, I wanted to split it up for people who maybe are more interested in the game and want to come back for the other chat later. Just a note that there was some audio distortion near the end of George's interview that I tried to edit around and clean up as much as possible. I didn't get 100% of it, though. I'm very sorry. It was a thing that's just baked into the recording. There's only so much I can do. As always, anything we talk about will be linked in the show notes, but enough out of me. Let's get into it. But yeah, how are you? How's everything been going with the Kickstarter? How's everybody feeling?
I mean, it's amazing, man. It's absolutely amazing. Like we broke 1,000 backers today. We're at like £46,580. I don't know what that is in dollars. It's like $55,000 or something. It's absolutely amazing. Genuinely, like no false modesty here. We would have been. In my wildest dreams, I hoped we might like end around here. So the fact that we're here after just a week is like, it's crazy good. I can't feel anything but happy, basically.
You're at that level of success where you're like, to want anything more would be ridiculous. Like,
exactly.
Like you said,
yeah.
I didn't even think
I'd love us to hit, of course, I'd love us to hit 100 grand, obviously. But
sure.
like, this is, now that my expectations have been smashed, I now have to raise my expectations. So,
Well, now I was looking over the Kickstarter page, and let me look at it again. Because I was so over lunch, I was telling my partner about the interview, and she was like, well, let me know. She's like, if you let me know if you want to watch a video or something while we're having lunch. And I was like, yeah, okay, check it out. She's very excited about the game.
That's what I like to hear.
She's like, so how much is the physical tier? And I'm like, well, okay, we'll look at it. We'll talk about it. So we'll see how it goes. What I like, and like this is one of those weird things where you want to compliment somebody on something, but not have it sound like an admonishment for other people. I appreciate that you don't have a lot of big, ridiculous stretch goals.
Well, we got none at all.
Yeah, I think that's a very difficult thing to do. I talked about it. I talked about it with somebody else where it's like you want to. I think you're. A lot of people hit the point you're at, right, where you're like, oh my god, we're doing so great. This is so much more than I expected. Oh my god, and their immediate the next feeling is like, we should do something. We should add something. We should, what if we did more? And then, and
that's how companies implode, man. That's how projects don't get delivered. That's how companies implode. Is how people ruin their reputations.
I think it's so important to understand that balance and understand that moment to say like, whoa, we're good.
The reason this was something that I really battled back and forward with. Like I am not a stretch goal kind of person. Like I think I'm not no shade on anyone that does them. It's part of the Kickstarter ecosystem. They're expected now. So when someone doesn't do them, it's like, ooh, they're not doing them. Like it looks like you're making a point by not doing them, and to an extent, we are making a point by not doing them. But like, for me, stretch goals are so often they're so often both disingenuous because it's stuff you've already done that you're just trying to hype people up to get into the book. You were already going to do it anyway, and it encourages overconsumption and overproduction of stuff. And like Mappa Mundi is this ecological exploration game. It's all about helping an environment recover and stuff like that. And so like to be sitting there saying, oh, we're going to add all this plastic shit in, like. no one actually needs it. Most of that stuff never comes out of a box, and when the box gets thrown away, it gets thrown away with it. And like so what it was like is, okay, I want to have stretch goals. I want to have things that people can knock down, so we'll do the social impact stretch goals instead. Like every pledge means that we're donating more of the money that we're making to, in this case, to an elephant sanctuary. But like, there's still that psychology of a stretch goal there, but it's actually, rather than just like, oh, what am I getting out of the stretch goals? It's actually what am I contributing to with the stretch goals? And I like that as a kind of as a best of both, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like you said, like it's caused heartache for, I'm sure, any number of people doing projects, stuff that would be totally manageable. I was chatting with Andy from Pandian. We were talking about just shooting the wind, and he was like I don't understand how a lot of these things happen, and I was like, it's probably just people not understanding what they're getting themselves into when they offer these things. They're just like, yeah, we'll make a box set, we'll do another book, we'll do extra cards, we'll do all of this. And I think I generally believe a lot of people get really upset at like Kickstarters that don't fund or fail or whatever. And I generally believe that there is such a small percentage of people who do Kickstarters actively looking to take money from people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. To rip them off, to fraudulently rip them off.
A statistical impossibility. Such a small amount of people do it with that in mind.
And it's so transparent nowadays as well, right? Like the Kickstarter customer base, because they're not just, people aren't just backers anymore. None of us are just backers. We know this landscape now. We know, like, we can tell when someone is obviously trying to rip us off 9 times out of 10. But yeah, I think it's a lot of people just get in over their heads. They throw stretch goals out there. They don't realize the tax implications, the extra manufacturing, the shipping costs that come with adding all that extra stuff in. Like, it's a lot, man. It really is a lot.
Yeah. And gosh, it was so heartbreaking seeing a lot of people's projects in, 2019 to 2021.
Yeah.
Like run into all of these problems that, when they went live, when they started putting the project together, shipping went up astronomically, paper went up huge, and all of these problems that were just completely outside of their control. And that sucks to see. So, one, as a fan of creative works, as TTRPGs, all this stuff, it sucks to see. But what disappointed me so much more was the large amount of people who decided that this was a plot to ruin them, that this was a personal decision to do. And I'm just like, guy, I'm like, you can be mad, right? I'm not saying you can't be upset. It's frustrating. I'm sure they're also frustrated. You know what I mean? I'm sure nobody is happy about having to ask you for another $40 to $50 for shipping. They probably would have eaten it or done less if they could have. Yeah. Nobody there is excited like, we get to take another $50 because they're not making that $50.
They're not making any money off that. Yeah.
Right. It goes straight from you. It gets probably like 15% knocked off for taxes and fees. And then it's going straight to some container company.
Yeah.
And that's what bothered me more was seeing the overwhelmingly negative support from people that I'm like, you should know better. You should know. Ugh. That's the thing. What gets me is people who should know better.
I get you. My hope is always that people do better when they know better. I think to some extent as well, like as creators and as designers and as people who are talking about games and talking about the process of getting games made and stuff, it's part of like, we need to be like, the transparency from our side of things, not just, I've got your money now, so now I'm going to try and be transparent about like when we're putting our orders in or what's going on here, what's going on there. But for us, like for me particularly, but for 3 Sales as a company, like transparency from day one, from start to finish, about what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we've chosen to do things this way, what our pricing logic is, all this different stuff is really important. And like, not everyone can do that, right? But it's a good point to aim at, of being like, how can I do this better? Like, how can I make sure people know? Like, I'm a huge proponent of, you get the community that you build.
Mm-hmm.
And like the community around Mappa Mundi and to I suppose to a broader extent 3 Sales is incredibly positive and incredibly supportive, because we set out with intention to build that community. I'm very like, as soon as someone steps out of line, transphobia, homophobia, racism, anything, gone straight away, no questions asked. Like, there's no second chances, there's no tolerance, there's no, oh, did they mean this, did they mean that? There's no equivocation. Those people are gone. And thankfully, we've never actually had anyone like that kind of openly in our community that we're aware of. But as the Kickstarter has been going on, you get, right-wing people.
Sure.
They, bless them, they're not very clever. And and they can't ever seem to keep their mouths shut. And so on a couple of the ads that we were running, we got people, really running against it. And I was like, gone. Deleted them, blocked the post, even deleted the ad so that there was no trace of them coming back and stuff. I've got it's just zero tolerance. And so if you by setting out, intentionally trying to build a community, and that is suffused in not just the game that you're making, but how you're talking about that game, how you're running your business, all this kind of stuff, that the more intentional you can be about that, the more likely you are to kind of reap the rewards of a good, healthy, positive community. And again, you're going to get infiltrators, and you're going to get assholes and stuff. But just get rid of them. They're gone as best as you can. Keep yourself safe. Keep your community safe. Get rid of them, and then you tend to have a better time.
This is a great spot. Nice spot in this nice warm open. Hi everybody, welcome to What You Doing podcast. I'm talking to George at 3 Sales about Mappa Mundi. The EERPG, the Ecology and Exploration RPG, which I love. I love that tag. I love really making a point to highlight that it is different and how it is different with pretty clear language. We always hit a point about 10, 15 minutes into chatting where I'm just going to do that, and then we just keep on rolling. It's fine.
Yeah, let's do it.
But yeah, like you said, the intentionality with making community spaces like that. I'm a streamer on Twitch. I've been doing this for 5-6 years. And it was a big thing for me starting out on Twitch, looking at the landscape and looking at the way a lot of other people have done it, and very intentionally making choices with the ways that I wanted to stake out my space. I believe that gatekeeping as a concept is good, because that is how you keep bad actors out of your space. You need to be clear and concise and specific with the rules and your expectations. And then you need to follow through when those expectations are breached, when your boundaries are breached, when people break your rules, whatever it is. A big thing that bothered me a lot in streaming spaces was no politics. People would have their rules would just be no politics. And I'm like, okay, cool. That worked in 2000.
That's a political choice. That's also a political choice, right? Because we all know what no politics means, right? It means don't hold me to account for all of the crap that I'm talking, which tends to be really right wing.
It came from a very different space in 2000, right? When a lot of the streamers that are popular started in the early 2000s, it came from a very different space, and like you said, it is itself a political choice. A lot of people didn't recognize, either willfully or unwillfully, that, like you said, that meant it was intentionally cutting off just the mention of certain things, just the very basic discussion of certain things, in a way that's damaging to your community, that's limiting to your community. I run a very, I like to say, a loose but tight ship, right? I'm very chill. I'm very open to discussions on various things. But also, as soon as you cross one of those lines, that's it. That's done.
Quite right too. I mean, I think so it reminds me of there's a post that goes around the internet quite frequently about it's a guy that being like, oh, I was sat in an old crusty punk bar, and it was just me and the bartender. The bartender evidently didn't want to talk to me whatsoever, and then in comes this guy, and the bartender's just like, no, get out. You're not welcome here. And the guy's like, oh, come on, man, I just want to come in for a drink, blah, blah, blah. The guy's like, no, get gone. And then the from the poster's perspective, being like, who's that? He's like, oh, he's one of the Nazi punks. He looks really respectable. And at first you might not want to make a scene. He's fine, but then he's going to bring a friend, and his friend's going to be worse than he is. And they're going to bring a friend. And eventually this becomes a Nazi bar. And he's like, you have to cut that stuff off at the source, not one person, because like that kind of ideology, that like right-wing ideology, infects places. They work. It's the politics of exclusion rather than inclusion, right? Like if you look at left versus right, the basest, most simplest dichotomy is exclusion versus inclusion, right and left. And right-wing people will come into your spaces and they will make everyone feel uncomfortable, and then those people will leave, and more people will come in, and suddenly, before you really know it, you've lost that space to them, and you've lost all the people that you have a duty of care and a duty of responsibility over, because this is our community, these are our friends, our people. We have a responsibility to look out for each other and look after one another. And if we're not doing that, like I say, so I'm saying with my kind of publisher hat on, in our community spaces, if we're not looking after our people, why should they trust us to do anything for them? And it's something as simple as making a game that they like. Like if I can't look out for their best interests, and sometimes we're going to make mistakes, but like it's pretty difficult to make a mistake when a fascist walks into the room. The mistake you make is not getting them out of that room as quickly as possible. So yeah, like there's always going to be like some things have gray areas, but some things really don't, right? And it's knowing the difference between those things. It's fine to have a discussion about things, but when the things you're discussing are about whether someone has the right to exist or not, there's no gray area there. There is no discussion there. Like that argument was lost a long time ago. So yeah, that's the position that we're in with it. We're trying to create, with everything that we do, we're trying to intentionally build our space and intentionally curate our space and make it safe and welcoming for our kind of community.
I think there's a lot of people. Well, I don't want to say there's a lot of people, because I think there's people who will sit and say, like, George is a white guy. Why are you so worried about this? Why are you doing such of this? Like, what is that your concern? But honestly,
that's exactly why it's my concern, right? Like, that's exactly why it's my concern. So I'm a cis white male. So I kind of like outwardly match a lot of the carry a lot of privilege with me. I'm also I'm masculine, but I'm also queer. I'm also neurodivergent. I'm also working class. All of these different things going on. But like because of my kind of physical bodily privilege and the societal privilege that comes with it, it's my responsibility to be kicking people out of communities. Like, don't make the people, like, sitting back and watching the people who have the most to suffer at the hands of these people have to do the work to defend themselves, and you just sit there and watch and be like, oh well, it's not for me to do. You are abdicating you're abdicating your responsibility there. You have a responsibility to stand in the way and soak up the damage, because I go about my daily life not really experiencing too much structural oppression. Mm-hmm. And so as a consequence, I have huge reserves of energy to put myself in the way of things, whether that's out on the streets, whether it's online in community spaces, whether it's at conventions, whatever that may be. I have that. I have, my privilege is something that should be used, not something that should just be there.
Yeah, and it's why for the longest time I've been the person very loudly picking fights on the internet, picking fights in spaces, and saying, "Hey, what is this you're saying? What is this? What does this mean? What are you saying?" Yeah. Because they see, I don't identify as exclusively a man, but they see a white man pushing back at them. Yeah. At the worst, they'll shut up. But more often than not, you can egg them into saying something worse. That's like, oh, got you now, done. You're done.
Gone.
That little your little slide. No, I'm gonna call you out on that sly little comment that I know what that means.
Make you explain it. Yeah,
I know what you're saying. Say it louder. Say it louder for all of us.
Yeah.
But yeah, you took the words out of my mouth. Exactly that is it has been disappointing to watch people who should be louder and making more of an effort, people with very large public profiles, who should be much louder and much more directed at making their spaces safer, continually failing to make those spaces safe. And so it's always good when you can. It's always good to find people who have that same train of thought of just like, no, if nothing else, these people are. I'm not going to welcome these people in public spaces. We're going to be very clear in our exclusion of them and our reasonings for doing so.
Yeah, and like as far as I'm concerned, that's like the very least you can do, right? It's the easiest, simplest, least thing you can do. And if you're not doing that, then you need to be asking yourself some questions, right?
I love it. That's not what we're here to talk about, but it's a great intro. It's a great way to start it off, I'll tell you. It's a great way to start it off. Right? So like I said, Mappa Mundi, Ecology and Exploration RPG. I almost said TTRPG. It's not. It's the EERPG. Yep. So we became acquainted. God, it's probably been almost a year at this point. Because I first came across 3 Sales talking about Mappa Mundi. And I had the reaction then that I think a lot of people have now. Maybe not for Mappa Mundi specifically, but just a lot of projects on the internet. Just that immediate concern about AI art. Because I think a lot of people, and I'm getting a little better about it, but I think a lot of people, have that sort of knee jerk of like, and thankfully that's not the case. Everything's cool. Everything's copacetic.
It's 100% not the case. Yeah. So not the case.
And that was part of why I was so immediately, enamored with 3 Sales was, just the very clear response that I got was just like, nope, not AI. There's no AI in our product whatsoever. This is our artist. We've been working together forever. And again, this is one of those things where it's like, I'm not calling out anybody specific. This isn't where I'm like, I'm not subtweeting anybody. We're just seeing so much more of it everywhere, and to an extent that like, I've been seeing people talk about it. People are pushing back on, God, what was the awards, the RPG awards?
The Ennies. Yeah, the Ennies. Yeah, they're accepting AI art submissions this year.
Yeah, and they pushed back on them on that and got them to change. And we're seeing places like Drive-Thru and Itch allow it with declaration, which I think sucks. And it's the same. I mean, hilariously, it's the same conversation, right? It's we're making spaces for these people who aren't acting with our best interests or aren't acting with the best interests of the community, I guess is a better way to phrase it. So segue, first of all, the art in Mappa Mundi is fantastic. I feel like it is a game that does a fantastic job of grabbing the theme and what it wants to be and what it wants to tell you and how it wants you to interact with it just immediately through the art. You have all of the art in the book. You have the art for the journey deck, which is fantastic. I watched a video from y'all at UK Expo, seeing all the tables, seeing all the art layout. What was kind of your I guess like driving ideas behind the art? What were your inspirations? What were your kind of big goals?
So when it comes to art, we're incredibly lucky as a studio. So there's 3 of us, right? So 3 Sales Studios, there's 3 of us. There's myself. So I founded the studio. I'm the studio lead and like the designer and creator of our games at the moment. We have Jeremy Blum, who is our editor and developer and co-writer, and he writes all of our adventures for Mappa Mundi and stuff like that. He's also now Mappa Mundi's producer. That's the role that he's kind of taking over as we start moving through Mappa Mundi and into other projects. Jeremy's taking on the producer role. And then we've got Joel Kilpatrick, who's our artist. Now, the 3 of us we all co-own the business together. And because for me, when I founded the company, I knew that I couldn't pay what I wanted to pay, if at all. And so I wanted to work with these amazing people. And so the way I put my money where my mouth was is by saying, look, here is a chunk of the business. That's yours. You own that in perpetuity. It's what you're not just making things for me, you're making things for you and for us. So when it came down to the art, Joel and I have been working. We've known each other for a long, long time, and he is. I said this on another podcast a few weeks ago, and I don't think it's a controversial thing to say. I genuinely think that Joel is among the best artists working in the TTRPG space at the moment. Like, without any shadow of a doubt, I think he's easily countable up there. And so when it comes to our art, often it's a case of just unleashing him and letting him go. Like, I know that no matter what I give him, he is always going to give me something better than I wanted. But that's not to say that we didn't have exactly. But it's also like he gives me things that I didn't know that I wanted as well, and it just makes it so much better. I definitely did want them, but I didn't know that I wanted them. Me and him work. In fact, all three of us work really well symbiotically. We've got a shared language and a shared understanding and practice together, which is really helpful. But when we started off with Joel, when we were coming up with the initial artwork, I had seen a game called Book of Travels, which I really, really liked the look of. It's a video game rather than a TTRPG, and it's quite a lot of it's awkward because watercolors don't splash despite being water, but it looks like quite splashy watercolor, like quite splashy watercolors. And I said to Joel, I was like, this is the kind of feel and texture that I'm looking for. And we started off with what has become the book, the book cover. Mm-hmm. This big, we just called it the Vista at first. And I said to Joel, I want a sense of scale and space. I want this world to look massive, but I clearly want our chroniclers visible in it. I want them to, I want people to be able to embody themselves within the piece. And he went away and he came back with this like a month later and just blew us away. And we ended up at UK Games Expo. We had it on like a 4-meter wide banner. Like it really drew people in. And over time, over the nearly 18 months that we've been actively developing Mappa, Joel's art style, which was already amazing, has gotten better and better and better as he's really eased into this. And one of the reasons he's been able to do that is because we pay him. Like he's not just an owner. Like he's not just an owner of the game. He's at the moment the only one of the three of us that gets paid. And so the way it works at the moment is Joel doesn't put any money in, but does get paid, but not his market worth. Jeremy doesn't put any money in, but doesn't get any money out, and I don't get any money out, and I pay Joel. So like it's just the way that it works at the moment. Business. But the Kickstarter's going well, so yeah, we're getting there. So we're in a position. Well, hopefully, when the Kickstarter finishes, we're going to be in a position where the business can start paying Joel. But the reason why this artwork is able to look so good and to really draw people in, and so people look at it and they can immediately feel the space that we're depicting and the scenes that we're depicting, is because Joel has the time and the security that this is his and that I'm going to pay him for as long as this company exists. I'm going to pay him, and I'm going to find ways to increase that pay as we grow as a company and stuff like that. And so that he has a sense of ownership, not only over his artwork, but also over the world that the three of us have built together. And that I feel that suffuses the artwork, and it allows people to look at it and be like, oh yeah, I can be part of this as well. I can see myself here. I can feel myself here. So yeah, like it's, with Joel, I always give him what I think are quite nebulous ideas, and over time we iterate and refine, and I can kind of rely on that shared language and understanding that we have to know that if I give him something, I know that I'm going to get what I see in my head. Even if I don't have the technical language that he has and the technical understanding that he has. But I have never, ever once had to say, I need you to go back and do this again. Not once. And, there's like, in Mappa Mundi, there's 70 journey cards, there's 30 monsters, there's 10, 30 monster artwork pieces, there's 10 creature artwork pieces, 10 huge regional landscape pieces, 50 interstitial pieces. Not one have I had to send back. Not one. And I just know I can rely on him to bring this vision to life, which is, it's his vision and my vision and Jeremy's vision, but more importantly than that, it's also our shared vision of the world. So the fact that it reaches out and grabs people, it is the thing, right? It's the thing that sells the game. Because of course it is. And I've known this for a long time, and I've built our kind of because I'm responsible for like the business side of things as well as the kind of design, the design side of things, and I've built our entire strategy for not just for Mappa Mundi but for 3 Sales Studios around knowing that Joel's artwork draws people in. Like when you are selling a game, especially a Kickstarter game, the first thing that people are buying is the artwork. The second thing they're buying is the concept. The third thing they're buying is the actual rules. And the artwork gets the book into people's hands, the concept gets it to the table, and the rules keep it at the table. And it goes in that order. And if you don't have all three of them, then you're not going to have a game that people are going to keep wanting to play and keep recommending to their friends. If you just have the first one and the second one, people will buy it, and then they'll play it and they'll be like, "Well, that was a waste of time and money. I'm not going to buy. I'm not going to share it. I'm not going to do that again." So if you were being really cynical about it, you just need good art and a good concept, and then the rules you can forget about them. But obviously, that's not who we are, and that's not what we want to do. And we want to make sure people love what they're doing, and that the rules fulfill the promise that the concept and the artwork made. So yeah, that's kind of how we operate. And like when we go to conventions, I have the biggest banner I possibly can with Joel's artwork on it. And you just at UK Games Expo, you just saw people walk past, they'd take a glance like they do at every other stand, and then you'd see them stop and look and be like, "Oh my God," and they'd come over and they'd ask. And I knew that would work, and it did, and it's continuing to work. Like everyone, I've not had one person say, "Oh yeah, I don't very much don't like the artwork very much." Like maybe there's some people out there that don't like it, but I've not heard from any of them.
It'd be very funny to just be like, "No, not for me."
Yeah, don't much care for it.
All right, well, okay. That's I do love the visual of being at a convention and seeing a person like 4 rows down or something like that, just like
you could see it though. We had like clear sight lines down these huge, and you see people making a beeline for it, and it's so good. So like, yeah, and it was such a successful approach that like, and obviously it's been borne out so far on the Kickstarter. Like, we broke 1,000 backers earlier on today, like I was saying, and which is again so far beyond where we expected to be that I still can't really quite believe it. But like I said to the guys, we had like so we launched at the time of recording this, we launched not yesterday but the Tuesday before, and we'd had our kind of normal monthly team meeting the Friday before that, and I was like, right guys, next Friday we're going to do this again, we're going to have a couple of beers, have a couple of drinks, whatever, just let's try and celebrate and or commiserate whatever's happening. And thankfully it was a celebration. But I said to the guys, I was just like, well, look, I'm just going to run this back out again. Next game, I'm running exactly the same playbook out again. We're going to do the same steps that we did this time again. And if it works again, it works again. And if not, at least I know where I need to change things.
Right.
But yeah, like I just know that I can rely on Joel to be able to put things out there. And I can rely on Jeremy as well to like make my ideas better. And like I am a huge proponent of not doing design work on your own. Like as much as you possibly can, get out of your own head and start working with other people. Set something up with someone. Like I think about that. I think of so many designers, especially here in the UK, who work in partnerships, who work in pairs. And there are plenty of people that work excellently on their own as well, but so many people work really well in pairs. And in mine, Jeremy and Joel's case, we work really well as a trio. We all just make each other better, and I love that fact. And so like,
well, it's because you get to hand it around, right? He gets an idea, and then you pass it back and forth between the two of you, and then you hand it off to Joel, and then maybe it comes back a little bit for something else, and it moves around to the different sections. Yeah,
and it just gets better and better the more we do it.
It's a thing that's come up a lot. Talking, I've been talking to a lot of people about their Zine Month things, and kind of related to what you said about work with someone else. Get someone else's eyes on your designs. Get out of your head and get it out there. It's a thing that keeps coming up about Zine Month is get it done. right? I think especially for Zine Month, like smaller projects, like it's, you know, get the idea done, get it out there, get it finished in that sense where you can put it out there and you can see what other people think of it. You can see, because it you know, you will see so many more problems the second it's done and out there and other people see it. You know, things that you won't see if we gave you months to look at it. You realize, actually, the way that this is worded is ridiculous because I didn't realize I wrote these things 3 months apart. And I didn't realize in this part I said this, and this part I said this, and those don't mesh. Okay, boop, 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 boop. And yeah, I would love. I love seeing designers who you know are working together, or it's fun seeing designers work in different pairings, you know, like, these people are working together and then there's a new thing with one of them in this. It's like, I wonder how that's going to be different. How are those energies going to meld together?
The super bad dynamic.
Right. Like, how's that going to go? And how's this going to go? And yeah, I love it. It's been so enjoyable as a person who doesn't do design. Like I'm very much like inside baseball though. Like I listen to people talk about design. I try to engage with those discussions insofar as I'm aware of them and listening and you know, trying to take them in and understand what people are saying. It's been amazing the last few years watching people do that work in public on social media, you know, forge friendships, form design partnerships, all of this past, you know, the sort of prevalence of SRDs becoming very popular of like, here's a design framework that I made. Here it is. You can build off of that. And then immediately 5 people will be like, boom, I made a game for it. Done. Here's 6 games for your thing. And then they go over here and they do it for that. And it just makes more fun games. And that's great. That's what everybody wants.
Yeah, and I love that. I think that point about SRDs is a really interesting one as well, because that's like collaboration at a distance, right? Mm-hmm. Like you have a design partner in 2 different, but temporally split. Like someone has done the SRD, and then you are collaborating with the thing that they've designed to design something new. Mm-hmm. And like people exploring different ways of working and different ways of marshalling their creativity and like or allowing that creativity to flow. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. And like one of the things we're really keen to do with Mappa Mundi, like in the very, you know, now and in the very near future, but also with our other games as they come out, is like community content and community licenses. So we're releasing Mappa Mundi alongside an incredibly permissive community license, which is basically like use the system, use the monsters, email us, and we can see if we can sort you out some of the artwork, all that kind of stuff. Like if you want to make something, we want to help you make it. And not only do we want to help you make it, but we want to help you promote it and sell it as well. So like people who make stuff with our community license can sell it. We don't want a single penny of anything they make. Like they've done the work. They deserve to be paid for that work. And we want to help them make as much of that as they can. And like we've already had like one of our community members, Jamie Bernstein, you know, we're talking months ago, had written like, you know, based off of the pre-release guide, had written an adventure called Deep Melody, which is it's so fucking good, man. It's really really good. And like we've been encouraging him as much as we possibly can, to the point where so the Euphoria they did an AP in advance, like for release day for Mappa Mundi, and they were like, you know, they're like, oh, we think we're going to do Root and Branch, which is the one that we included as part of our pre-release guide. And I was like, guys, you know what? Like we've got this community member who's written this really good adventure. Like you should take a look at it. And they ran it. Yeah, they ran it, and it's so good. They loved it. We loved it. He loved it. The community loved it, and I hope that shows people as well that like how committed we are to trying to help people, you know, not just get their start, but also to like branch out into new things. Like treat Mappa Mundi as a design challenge. Like if you're an adventure writer for basically any other game, you're going to be dealing with combat and stat blocks and all this kind of stuff. Here's a design challenge. Design something for Mappa Mundi. Like design an adventure that has no combat in it because the rules don't have any combat in, and see what you can do with it. Like like my design process works by imposing restrictions on myself. Like the tighter the restriction. When I was like 17, 18, 19, and I was like doing that whole thing where I was like, the cocky literary white boy trying to write his own shit poetry and stuff like that. Like when I was doing that, I was very much like, oh yeah, free form, all that kind of stuff. And that's because I didn't have the discipline to actually write something.
Mm-hmm.
I was just throwing ideas out there to try and impress boys and girls.
The only rules are no rules because rules are limiting, man.
Yeah, exactly. And then around that time, I was introduced to this like surrealist art movement called Wheelerpo, and like Wheelerpo is about like extreme restriction and how by putting such extreme restrictions in place, your brain is forced to become like uber creative to get around it. So like there's a novel called Eunoia, which is a Wheelerpo novel, so each chapter only uses words with one particular vowel in. So there's an A chapter, an E chapter, an I chapter, an O chapter, a U chapter. So like all of the words, there's no other vowels except A in the first chapter, none other than E in the and it's amazing. Like
it sounds interesting.
Really amazing. It's so good. Anyone, so it's Eunoia, EUNOIA. I recommend it to absolutely anyone.
That'll help later. Everything we talk about as a note, sorry to interrupt, as a note, everything we talk about will be in the show notes. So, George, thank you for spelling that for me later when I'm doing the show notes.
But yeah, so like this idea of putting extreme restriction on yourself, like, the Wheelerpo proponents take it to those kinds of extremes. Like it's really like they'll paint a landscape but only use one color and stuff like that. So they're painting a forest scene but they're only using red. And all that kind of stuff. So like when I was in my late teens, and again, an arrogant, cocky white boy, I was like, that's ridiculous. Why would you do that? Free form's the best, man. Like, have you not read On the Road? Have you not read Allen Ginsberg? All stuff like that. And I still love Allen Ginsberg. I hold a torch for Allen Ginsberg. But as I started designing, I started really like, at first it was kind of subconscious, but then I became more and more aware of it, of like, and I think part of this has come along with like learning about my ADHD diagnosis as well. So I got my ADHD diagnosis kind of middle of last year. But like actually putting these restrictions in place has been really, really helpful. And like Mappa Mundi, the original concept for Mappa Mundi had combat in it. I didn't want it to have combat in it, but I was like, oh, you can't design a game without combat. I was like, no one's going to buy it. And then
everyone wants the same game 7 ways.
Exactly. And then before I kind of discovered that there are plenty of games out there without combat in, I was like, no, stick to the courage of your convictions and don't put any in. And then design a game that gives you the same kind of drama and feel and jeopardy and tension that most people just rely on combat for, which I actually think is a pretty boring way of doing jeopardy and doing tension, because it's very easily resolved. You just kill the other thing,
right?
And then there's no more tension anymore. So like as I go through now and as I design, I make sure I'm like setting myself these guidelines, these boundaries, and being like, design in this, and better things comes out. And Jeremy now has learned how to hack my ADHD and sets me design challenges. He puts the restrictions in place for me. He's like, right, go off and do it. And I'm like, oh God, right, you've really got me there. So like our game number three, which is, we're not announcing yet, but we're really excited about, was born out of one of these design challenges. We were sat at Dragon Meet, the convention in the UK, and Jeremy was like, right, design challenge for you. You've got these 3 criteria and 10 minutes, design me a game. And 10 minutes later, we were workshopping this idea, and now it's game number 3 on our slate. So it works.
Love that. If nothing else, like you said, it is more interesting to work within those limitations, right? It's not having a kitchen sink approach means that the things that you do include are so important. They're able to be fleshed out a lot more. You're willing to put more care and attention to them. I say this every time. I'm a big System Matters girly. I think a huge part of play at the table, the story that you choose to tell and the way that you choose to tell it, is based off of the game that you play. I saw some people talking about it,
or it should be, at least, right? People who are like, oh, I want to do this really deep, intense werewolf thing. How do I make it fit into D&D? Or I want to do Severance, but how do I make that into D&D? And it's like, guys, come on, like there's systems out there that can do this for you way easier. You don't have to use D&D for this.
The thing I always pull up was the article I saw that was like how to make the Cyberpunk Edge Runners characters in D&D. And I was like, wow, you really, you had to try on that one. You really
missed the point here,
I think you did this one intentionally. But yeah, the way I think of it, at least, is the way that you tell the story that you're trying to tell is impacted greatly by the system. If I want to do a zombie game, if I pick Red Markets, if I pick the Walking Dead game, if I pick Bar the Windows, Bolt the Doors, all three of those, if I pick Dread, all of those games are going to be very different because all of the focuses of those games are very different. And they might have a lot of shared elements, and that's just media literacy, baby. That's just, we saw a zombie movie. And so I really appreciate games and designers of games that are very clear and focused on the intent of their game. Here are the stories we want to tell. Here's the way we want to tell those stories. And here's the way, because like you said, I think it would have been very easy to just here's some combat rules. If you need them, they're there. And I don't think anybody would have begrudged you for it. I don't think there really would have been anybody who would have been like, you know what I mean? But I think it's so heartening to see someone say, no, it doesn't need to be in there. And in fact, we're going to explicitly exclude it because those aren't the stories we want to tell with this game, with this system, with this world.
And I think I'm really glad that comes across, and like it's interesting because I'm a kind of big systems matter person as well. Like I couldn't agree with you more. The system you choose inevitably shapes the game that you're playing, right? Of course it does. In the same way that, like, if I'm trying to do a task and I have an option of 3 tools, the task is going to get done, the task being we've played a game. But the way that I go about that task and maybe the results of that task are going to look different and feel different. But like, so I'm really big on systems matter as well, but I am also like, I am fully a theme first designer. So like, but I think that it agrees with your point, that your kind of your follow-up point, which is like, if you are intentional about the stories your game is going to tell, you need to set that first, and that comes from a theme and it comes from a concept, right? So Mappa Mundi was, what if, literally the very first concept for Pokemon, for Mappa Mundi was, all right, it's Pokemon, but it's what I think is the actual point of the Pokemon games, which is to complete the Pokedex. Like, when you are playing those, I remember, I
have a lot less of it behind me, but you're talking to the right person to talk about Pokemon. Let me tell you.
But like, so when I remember so vividly the first time I played a Pokemon game, I can tell you exactly where I was. I can tell you what time of year it was.
What game was it?
I can tell you it was Pokemon Red. It was 1997. 1997. I was playing it on my school friend Ryan's big old grey Game Boy.
Hell yeah.
It was like it was in the summer. It was towards the end of the school year because I was playing a Game Boy in class. So it must have been like the last day of term or something like that. We were having like a free day or something. It was
a casual day. They weren't too stressed about it.
Exactly, yeah. And I just remember being sat there for hours, absolutely obsessed with it. Chose Bulbasaur, obviously.
Hell yeah.
Bulbasaur represent every
Hell
time,
yeah.
Every single time. But like,
best podcast guest. First person to say it. Best one.
There we go. I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy that we agree. But like, that game, like, people are like, oh, well, your point is to become, to beat the Elite Four and become Pokemon champion, right? And like, the narrative of the game directs you towards that. Like, that's what your character wants to do. But actually, when you just even give it a modicum of thought, the person that sends you out on your journey is not an ex-Pokemon champion. It's a Pokemon researcher. It's Professor Oak, right? He gives you a Pokemon and a Pokedex. Actually, probably, like the point, and it gives you the Pokedex first before you get to choose your Pokemon, and then your Pokemon is the first entry into it. And when you beat the Elite Four, it doesn't congratulate you for beating the Elite Four. It judges how much of the Pokedex you've filled in.
Right.
And then allows you to carry on playing and says, go out and finish it. Like, that is the point of the Pokemon, or at least of the early Pokemon games, right? And so I was like, the theme to kind of moving on from the ADHD divergence, like, Mappa Mundi's first idea was, what if the point of Pokemon was to complete the Pokedex? And then I was like, well, Pokedex is just a bestiary in another name. And what if it was medieval map themed? And then that was it. I was out of bed, into the office, writing it down, frantically writing it down. But that was the origin of the idea. And then I was like, okay, so this is the story I want to tell. I want to tell a story of like the discovery that I felt, and the exploration, and that joy that I felt in like finding a new Pokemon that I felt as a 7-year-old, and I even feel now when I go back and play them. Like, those are the stories I want to tell. So then I need to build a system. I need to build a system that allows the game to tell those stories. And so for me, it's like I start off on the theme, and I swing over to the mechanics, and once that's in place, I then need to make more theme to fit that, or I need to tweak the theme to fit that. And then after a while, for me, like, the pendulum ends up settling. It should settle right in the middle of theme and mechanics, and that is what I think a system is. A system is like that, for me, the perfect marriage between theme and mechanics. And it's like, I don't really get on with these like universal TTRPG systems. I think they're amazing things to have created, but like, you go onto like Facebook groups or community groups or whatever, and someone's like, I want to run this, what system should I use? And every single time someone's like, use GURPS, use this, use that. And I'm like, fine, great. Okay, like, yeah, use it if you want, but also here's these 3 other games that like specifically do what you want to do, and specifically tell the stories. And like, I love the versatility of the universal systems, but I'd never use one. I'd never play one myself. Like, I'd never bring it to a group and be like, right, we're going to do this in a universal system.
I think it's the same discussion, right? Where it's like you said, it's being intentional with the game. I think when you, at least the way I view it, when you play one of those universal systems, right? If you're like, we want to play Fate, right? What you're doing is playing Fate, right? Like, that's the thing you've chosen to do, and then you figure out how to do the story that you want to tell. And so, like you said, I appreciate them. I respect them from a design decision. Like, man, you designed that game, and for nothing else, congratulations. But for the same way, like you said, there's not things in that game to grab me. There's not mechanics to bounce around in, and the mechanics don't inform the theme. They don't
deepen the theme, right? They don't bring that theme. They don't animate that theme. So for me, that's like, again, this idea of the pendulum. Like, the theme should animate the mechanics, and the mechanics should then animate the theme. They are like, they should bring each other to life. Like, these are, and I feel very passionately about this. Like, and I understand that I've had these discussions with other people before. Like, I understand that TTRPGs are, in a purely sociological sense, luxury products. Like, I understand that. Like, I don't deny it. And I'm not like questioning its classification sociologically. But for me, they go beyond. They're not a luxury product in terms of usability, because like, this is how you are choosing to spend your leisure time. Your leisure time is not it shouldn't be a luxury, right? Your time, that's your time. That is your life. And the way you choose to spend that is so important. And like, I don't have the time to waste on things that aren't making that time more better or more enjoyable. Like, if that makes sense. I could go, and I keep saying GURPS because it's the only one that's coming to mind. There's no shade against GURPS here. Like I said, I think.
But you're right.
I think designing
every single time anyone suggests anything about a TTRPG, it could be literally anything. Someone could be like, "I want to play cybernetic enhanced humans and trolls and elves, and we rob from corporations with weapons and technology." Someone will suggest GURPS. They'll be like, "Oh, what you want to do is you want to get this book, and then here's this blog post with all of this stuff, but GURPS will hand it." And you're like, Sure. Yeah. All right. But there's always that person. You're absolutely
Yeah.
right.
And again, like I said, it's no shade. It's always the one that comes up. But I would, to use your example there, I could just go and play Cyberpunk, or I could play Cyborg, like the Morkborg Cyber. I could play any of those games, right, that do all of those things without me having to hack GURPS to do it. And in addition, the stories that I would be able to tell running that game or playing that game using a universal system will be less deep and rich and nourishing of the time that I'm putting into it, and the time that the people are playing are putting into it as well, than it would be if I actually just went and used a system that's built for that, and a system that is intentionally built for it, where the theme animates the mechanics and the mechanics animate the theme. Those are the experiences that I really, really remember in my TTRPG experience. For example, I ran for a few of my friends here in Manchester. I ran, I hadn't played a TTRPG in a few years, and I was surrounded by people, some of whom, like me, had quite a lot of experience, but some people who hadn't played before but really wanted to. And I got together a One Ring campaign, the Cubicle 7 version, so before Free League took it over. I've not played the Free League one, but I hear it's incredible.
I do hear it's very good.
This was the Cubicle 7 version. And I hadn't GM'd in a long time. I'd been a forever GM. I hadn't GM'd in a long time because I hadn't played in a long time. And so I bought the rule book and I downloaded the Rohan adventure pack. And because I love the Rohirrim. Who doesn't love the Rohirrim? Sure. They're amazing. And me and 3 friends played it, and it was so good. And we really lent into the theme because I was running it. And one of my players, Phil, one of my friends, he died in the last adventure, sacrificing himself to save the King of Rohan. And so when this big Titanic battle ended, we held a Rohirric royal funeral for him. And I put the music on from Theodred's funeral scene, and we got some drinks, and we did this whole thing, and it was beautiful. And that was an example of theme and mechanics animating each other, because the mechanics allowed him to do that heroic self-sacrifice thing. And the theme encouraged it, because it's the Lord of the Rings. What else is it about except normal people sacrificing themselves, right? For the betterment of others. And that, if I can do that as a designer, if I can design a system which is that marriage of theme and mechanics that allows people to experience that kind of feeling every time they play it, and then every person that plays it, every table that plays it gets, to one extent or the other, gets those feelings, that I could die a happy man. It's a beautiful, rewarding feeling. And I think that's the nicest thing for me about Mappa Mundi, is seeing that happen every single time we run it. Every single time you see people being they experience the majesty of nature and of discovering. They're not discovering things insofar as these things have always existed and people have always known they're there, but they're discoveries for them. It's their reward for putting themselves out there, is a piece of something that they are discovering for themselves, and you can see it on their faces. People's jaws drop, or you hear that sharp intake of breath, or some people get dewy eyed and they're on the edge of tears and stuff, and some people are happy and celebrating, and it's beautiful. And I just love it. That stuff's crack. And so getting to do this as a job.
I love the idea of you at UK Games Expo while they're doing demos and stuff, just over the table,
You joke, but that was literally it.
Just spending
that was
the whole
literally
time.
because we were running. So we ran. One of the things we did that very, very few people do. I think we didn't really see anyone else doing it, and it was a lot of our friends and colleagues in the UK side of the industry were oh, actually, we think we might do that next year. We ran games on the stall. So we got a bigger, wider stall, so we could have games running on the stall. So even if the games were all booked up, people could sit and listen in and watch games being played. And it was so, I just loved it, because as usual, I'm front and center ringmaster, drawing people in, telling them about the game, getting them signed up, all that kind of stuff. And then you've got Jeremy and our friend David running games the whole weekend and just like hearing people being like, yeah, we did it, or like, oh my god, or like, you know, all of that stuff. And I just get sucked back into it every time, and like getting to talk to people after they'd finished playing and be like, what do you think? And they're like, we loved it. Like that was when I knew we were onto something with Mappa. Like I suspected it, and then seeing it, like people who'd never heard about it, they had no obligation to us whatsoever. They were literally strangers coming up to us at a convention. And hearing that kind of like universal, the fact that we'd gotten the experience that we intended to get every single time was just like, right, that's we've done something special here.
I love it. And so I mentioned we were watching, my wife and I were watching the video over lunch, and she was, you know, going all the way back. She said specifically how enamored she was with the art. She's a very visual person. She was laughing. She was like, this game has good art. You got to have good art if you want me to be interested in your game. So I was laughing at her. But what you said about Pokemon specifically is a thing she talks about all the time, because she also enjoys Pokemon. But what she dislikes is how much every Pokemon game focuses on combat as a kind of core feature. When like, so, you know, you have Pokemon the game, and then when you have Pokemon the anime or any of the shows or anything come out, she loved the Pokemon, I forget the name, like the Pokemon Spa anime that they did on Netflix a while ago. That was just like,
yeah, that was so good. Oh my god, I loved it.
And it was
what
just
was
like,
it called?
It was just like, yeah, it's Pokemon on an island and they're just chilling.
Yeah,
you know,
was it Pokemon Hotel or something like that? Like, it was whatever it was. I loved it.
No,
it was
fantastic. Fantastic, like animation and craft to it as well. But there's just the story. She loves that. And so like this game having a similar bent, a similar design in that, she's gonna love. She's
well, I mean, so my favorite Pokemon game, even to this day, is still Pokemon Snap. Like, it's the good. One you know, on the N64, like you're going around on that track taking photos of Pokemon. Like, I love it. I just love it. And like, because this is again, you know, like that tenet of Pokemon being like, yeah, you've got to make them fight, is like when you again even just basically scratch the surface and being like, you're capturing these animals and making them fight each other for your own amusement.
I grabbed that bird from the tree and now I'm gonna throw it at your bird, and you're like,
yeah,
okay, that seems weird.
Or it is, I've got this tiny rat and you've got a giant dragon. Let's make them fight. Like,
I wanted to come back to that point, but I really, like you said, I've been to a number of conventions and very few of them go through the effort. I know it's an effort to do demos on site and stuff like that. But I always just think of how satisfying it's got to be for designers to be like,
oh man,
do they like it? Do they like it? And just the whole weekend of people screaming about it.
Yeah, and like this is the thing as well. Like, so again, like, you know, going right back to the start, that building the community you want. You know, be intentional about building the community you want. If you give people your time, so there's a whole number of ways that we did this as a studio, as a company, and like our pre-release guide, which we released in April of last year, has all 4 of our characters in, all of the core rules, one of the 10 regions, and a pre-written adventure. Like, realistically, you'd never actually have to buy the game. You could just use the pre-release guide, or now it's been replaced by the quick start guide, which is the same. It's the same stuff, but, you know, polished up for the final release and like in the new layout and stuff. You don't ever actually have to buy Mappa Mundi if you don't want to. You can take the quick start and you never have to buy it. And when we were at UK Games Expo, people were like, are you sure? Like, you're giving away a lot. And I was like, every single person, I was like, look, if you are generous with people, they tend to be generous back. Like, with their time, with their money, or with their support. Or ideally all 3, but even if just one of them. And even if they're not generous back, being generous is the right thing to do. Like, it's just a good thing to do. And people remember it. And people, like, so many people, like, on our, you know, obviously the Kickstarter is ongoing, and like we see the backer surveys coming in afterwards, and people are like, I saw you at UK Games Expo, I played a game at Dragon Meet, I did this, I did that, you spent 10 minutes talking to me. Like, I love getting to meet people, and especially when those people want to play our games, or like I love it. I absolutely love it. And so it's a very natural way of running things for me. But it's paying dividends because, like, one, it's the right thing to do. Even if it wasn't going to earn us a penny, it's the right thing to do, so we do it anyway. But the fact that it makes people into enfranchised fans and community members. These are the people that are going to go out to bat for you. These are the people that are going to talk about your game when you're not there. These are the people that are going to they're going to back you on Kickstarter on day one. They're going to help you fund, for a first project. Like, Mappa Mundi is big for a first project. Like, it's 220-page book, 70-card journey deck. It comes in a box. Like, our funding target for a first-time campaign was £12,500. And, like, we hit it in 58 minutes because people wanted us to succeed because we'd taken the time to let them know us, and we'd taken the time to let them to get to know them. And so running those games on the stand is a big part of that. And so me and my friend Alfie, we're from very similar backgrounds, like both very, very working class, both very similar parts of the country, very similar backgrounds. And so a lot of the metaphors we use are drawn from our experience growing up poor. And one of the things I was explaining to our approach to him, and I was like, well, look, if we're running games on the stand is going to look busy and more people are going to come over. And he's like, oh yeah, no one puts money into an empty cup. And, like, I know that, a lot of us know that metaphor, but, like, it's so cynically having people playing games on the stand looks good and more people are drawn in. But it's also, like, so many people struggle with finding people to play their games before they're released. Like, getting that feedback is really important for your ongoing development. And so making that space available for people to play it. Yeah, we had, like, I can't even remember. I think we ran 18 games over that weekend.
That's a lot.
Yeah, the feedback we got was universally good, but people were like, oh, like, could you just explain this bit? So I'm making a mental note to be like, okay, I need to smooth that out in the next draft. And obviously, we spent money going to that convention. That having that extra stand space cost us more money than it would to have a small stall. But it's so worth it. It's, if you are making yourself available and accessible, and if you're being generous with people, people are going to be generous back one way or the other. And, these are my, like, touchstones for how I want to be, is not just as a designer, but as a publisher and as a community member in the wider TTRPG space as well. Be generous. If someone needs something and you are in a position to do it, do it. You're duty bound to do it. If you are in a position to do it. Now, that can mean lots of different things, but if I can do something, like, so back in August and September, I ran our advertising, like our kind of community building advertising. I ran it myself. It went really, really well. We were getting really good results. And a lot of people were like, oh my God, how are you doing this? And I was like, I'll show you. Give me 10 minutes. We'll jump on a call. You can look at all my numbers, how I set everything up. Here's all the stuff that I'm using. Here's my ad assets. You share your screen, I'll help you get it set up, because I had the time to do it, and it's the right thing to do, and it's going to help those people, and those people are going to remember that. And if that's when I need help, they'll be like, oh, I can help you with that, Joe. Not that I'm doing it for the return, but this is the way that community building and mutual aid works. Like, I'm wearing my political colours as usual. Like, mutual aid is the basis of a successful community and a successful society, and that is what we are as TTRPG designers and players and reviewers and critics and thinkers and everyone. We are a community, and we are, to an extent, a society as well. And like with our Discord community, our Facebook community, the communities around 3 Sales, you get the community that you build. And so be decent in it. Like, it's not hard not to be an arsehole. Do you know what I mean? It isn't hard. Just don't do that.
It's a thing that's come up a few times. I like your use of enthusiastic fans. I think that's great. I think a lot of I'm not going to say I think a lot of people, that feels weird. It feels like I'm calling somebody out. It's the difference between someone being a customer and a community member, or being a fan. And it, even if, so like you putting the quick start, the preview thing out, right? Even if someone doesn't back your Kickstarter, if they see it and, they share it, or they tell their friend, or they go, oh, I read the preview thing for that. That's actually really good. And maybe someone else backs it. Or, they're talking to somebody at the game store about it. It's incredibly small thing that just garners nothing but positive feelings, positive reactions from people. Having it visible in that way makes the decision to, pull the trigger on something like that a lot easier. Not to say it's expensive, but hey, it's a whole book and a whole deck of cards. That's a purchase.
People, it's an investment. Any purchase, people need to think about any purchase. But while potential customers and potential community members and potential fans were like, "Are you sure? That seems very generous." So I was like, "I want you to have it. I want you to know that you want to buy this. I don't want you to think you might want to buy it. I want you to know." And then from the business side of things, I make that pre-release guide available, right? I make it available, the quick start guide, pre-release guide, whatever it is, the full rules. People don't then need to buy the game, right? And I might lose some sales over that, but those people probably weren't going to buy the game anyway. So I've not actually lost anything, and I've done the right thing by being generous. And as an artist, I want people to play my game. As a publisher, I need people to buy it, but as an artist, I just want people to play it. And I need to survive, and I need to pay my people, and I need to I want to grow so we can bring new people on and give them good jobs that pay well, to doing work worth doing, and people we love and respect. And I need to sell games to do that. But fundamentally, really, I want you to play it. And if that person downloads the quick start guide, they're like, "Oh, I'm not going to buy it now," but they play it. Fine, good, great. I really hope you enjoy it. No hard feelings whatsoever. I put it out there for you to do that. But you're right. That person then might say to someone else, "Oh, guys, I've got this game I want to run for you," and they run it for 4 people, and then one of those 4 people goes and buys it. Great,
there
perfect,
you go.
Excellent. Yeah, mission from the business side, mission accomplished.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to view that ecosystem, that interaction, right? Of saying, hey, like you said, they might not have bought it anyway. And if you didn't put the quick start out, they almost certainly weren't going to buy it because they didn't know.
They definitely weren't going to buy it if it wasn't there, right?
So it's great. I love anytime somebody does a little quick start or a little preview, because no one is pretending that those things are free, and so I really hate calling them free previews or whatever, because wherever it came from, it took work to produce.
Yeah.
But it's always so heartening to see them get excited about, like you said, building the community, getting people excited, getting people interested ahead of time.
I'm talking about them being free. We put the quick start guide up on DriveThruRPG, and we made it pay what you want, and the suggested donation was £1. And I think that's been downloaded. I don't have the figure. I'd have to look the figures up. But I think that pre-release guide was downloaded on DriveThruRPG 1,000 times. But nearly 250 people paid for it. They chose to pay for it. Most people chose to pay the minimum. Someone paid $50 for it. I don't know who it was. And whoever it was, thank you so much for them doing it. It was great. But the pre-release guide is a silver bestseller on DriveThruRPG.
That's very funny.
As a pay what you want, it's amazing.
That's amazing.
And so, but this is the thing. Again, if you're generous with people, they tend to be generous back. Even if it's a £1 comes out to $1.24, $1.25, depending on the exchange rate. So we've made $250 off that, but that paid for our physical maps to be shipped over. We were being generous with people, and people were generous back. It was absolutely amazing. And if you look at the stats for sales on DriveThruRPG, those are metal tiers. It starts at copper, then goes to silver, then goes to gold, all stuff like that. So you have to make 50 sales, paid sales, to get to copper, and more than half the games that are available, more than half the things that are available for download on DTRPG haven't achieved copper. For whatever reason. So the fact that our pre-release guide got to a silver bestseller was amazing. But it's proof. We are at the moment, we are proof that this approach works. Like, we've, I have put a lot of money into this. Like, every penny that we've spent has come, from one direction or another has come from me. And like, it's tough, man. I work I've got the studio as a full-time job. I work a full-time civil service job, and I do freelance journal editing. So like, I work 3 jobs. One of those jobs pays Joel, one of them pays me, and the studio is now kind of self-sustaining, right? But like, it's an expensive way of doing things, and it comes with, obviously that comes with risks. And I have the privilege of like, all the three of us live in the UK. We don't have to pay for our healthcare. Like, I do not know how people in the US do it. Like, the idea that like because you have to have healthcare. Yeah, I know, but like that safety net that we have in the UK and Europe, that allows us to make the decisions that they'd be like, actually, I'm going to put money into the studio. I'm going to put money into the game. I'm going to do this because I don't have to worry about going bankrupt if I get sick. Like, I recognize that's a privilege. It's also a fundamental human right. And like, America needs to get its shit together. But like, so like, it's a risky way of doing things, but we are proof that the approach at least works. That like, the fact that our pre-release guide got to silver bestseller, the fact that we're on our way to raising £50,000 on Kickstarter in just over a week, and this is not me bragging about this. Like, we put a lot of work and a lot of stress and a lot of effort into this. Like, we
brag on it. You worked hard.
Yeah, what we are is we're proud of ourselves, and I feel very vindicated in our approach. And I really hope that people look at what we've done, and like, with the stretch goals and stuff like that, like, you can make decisions that don't seem like, that are not the orthodox, right? That Kickstarter, to do a successful Kickstarter, you have to have pledge level, stretch goals at like 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, all this, just adding shit onto the plate. It's gonna make your job harder. People see through it. It's disingenuous. A lot of people don't want this stuff anyway. There are other ways of doing things. And like, I have to thank Chris McDowell, Mythic from Bastionland. Chris, he lives locally here, like Into the Odd Designer, Electric Bastionland, Mythic Bastionland. He lives here in Manchester. He's a good friend of mine. And like, I looked at Mythic Bastionland, which I backed instantaneously back in December 2023. And he had no stretch goals. He's like, the book is the book. It was one pledge level. Well, it's 2 pledge levels, a digital one and a physical one. That was it. He's like, the book is, I'm giving you the best version of the book I can. That's what you're going to get. And I saw that, and I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure the book is as high quality as it can be. All of the content is there. Nothing is held back. No need for stretch goals. Let's try and do some good with it instead. Like, we were not the first one through the wall with this, in the same way that we weren't the first ones to make an RPG with no combat. Like, Monster Care Squad, Sandy Pug Games, Monster Care Squad, they broke through this wall in terms of what we're trying to do. And like, I'm incredibly grateful. And I think Sandy Pug as a collective are just, they're some of the most amazing people in the industry. Big inspirations, kind of personally and professionally. They broke the wall down, and we're now stepping through it. But we're trying to do other things that allow to break other walls down and show people that there are other ways you can do this. You don't have to go out and spend $10,000 on pre-market advertising. You can do it yourself. And by the way, if there's anyone out there who wants to do it themselves, drop me an email. Go to the 3 Sale Studios website, get my email address, drop me an email, and I will do what I can to help you get that stuff set up. Like, I can't guarantee you any results because I'm not a marketer, but I try to do things DIY, and it worked for us, and it's worked for people that we've shown. I'm happy to kind of help you do that, like, completely free, no obligation. I'll just do it and to help you out. Because people helped us out and people broke down walls for us, so we want to try and do that for other people, because that's the way we build a healthy community, is we look after each other. Right. That seems to be very much the theme of this discussion.
Well, and it's come up a lot in the other interviews. I mentioned talking with Andy at Pandian. he reiterated a lot of the things that you said, where, he shared, he helped people with layout stuff. He helped people with design stuff. He helped people with shipping stuff for the exact same reasons. Someone helped him.
Yeah.
And so now he learns, and then he passes that information on, or it's something that he knows and learned. And, instead of someone having to struggle with it and figure it out themselves and maybe not figure it out and run into a bunch of other issues, you can just say, hey, here's what I did. It worked. And you can do it. It may, like you said, with the marketing, it may or may not work for you for any number of reasons, but at the very least, I can tell you all of the steps that I did. I can show you how I set it up. I can show you all the things that I went through.
And just before we jumped onto the recording here, like, I don't know how many people have seen this yet, but now the name's escaped me. J Dragon and the Wander Home Publishing Company. Peach? Is it Peach? No, is it
Possum Creek?
Possum Creek. That's it. I keep going to say Peach Garden, and that's a distributor. Possum Creek Games have just announced that they're now an imprint of Steve Jackson Games. Right. This is taken the TTRPG design community by storm, because everyone's like, I'm sorry, who? Like, who have matched up? They're so different. And but it's amazing. It's really, really good. And I was just reading an interview that Rowan from Rascal News did with Jay from Possum Creek, and with her name completely escapes me. From she's the CEO.
Oh yeah, it was. I just saw that too.
But Jay said something that's really interesting, and is not the first person I've heard say this. So Jay said, this is an industry, the indie TTRPG industry lacks institutional knowledge. I'm paraphrasing, but lacks institutional memory. So we all make the same mistakes again and again and again. We always make the same. We make mistakes that 10 other, 50 other, 100 other designers and publishers before us made. And there are people out there in the industry, in the indie scene, who are doing their level best to make sure that we're starting to build up institutional memory. So Rowan Rook and Deckard are a perfect example of this. And special shout out to Matt Sanders, who is Rowan Rook, and his official job title is professional friendly person. Now Matt does so much more than that, but Matt and Maz have been really. Maz is one of the co-founders of Rowan Rook and Deckard, is their kind of business manager. Both Matt and Maz have been incredible with me on our journey to be we made these mistakes and we're telling you them so you don't make them as well, because we want you to succeed. We want you to do well at this. And they introduced me to the person who's doing our US fulfillment, who also does consolidation, which means we can get into retail. They introduced when UK Games Expo, they intentionally bought a US distributor over to talk to us, and me and Maz sat down for nearly an hour at the end of the convention, just shooting the shit and talking some business ideas, but also just getting to know each other personally. It was really lovely. And I know that whenever I've got a question, I can send Matt a message. He's be like, this is how we've done it. It might not work for you in this way, but these are the people you might want to talk to about it. And so that building up of institutional memory is really helpful. And I again, it's like I said, if you can do something to help someone and you're in a position to do it, you should do it. You're duty bound to do it. In my mind, that's the way that I kind of hold myself to account. And so when I see people who are oh, I'm thinking about this or I'm thinking about that, but I'm not sure, I go to them and say, look, these are the things that I learned from other people. This is the way we're doing things. It seems to be working. I can't verify yet because of X, Y, and Z, but I think this is working. Here's how I'm testing it. If you want help, let me know, and I'm happy to do that. And I also put them in contact with the people that helped me, because, again, we're just better as a result of it. We're all better as a result of it. And I've said this on so many podcasts now, but I think I say it so often because I think it's really worth repeating. Now, normally this is a bullshit capitalist aphorism, a rising tide raises all ships. But in this industry in particular, that is actually true. Normally that means, a rising tide lifts my ship higher than it lifts yours because my ship has special jet propulsion things that I built by exploiting your labor. But in the TTRPG industry, I genuinely think the better we all are, the more successful we all are, the more successful we are all able to be.
Because the thing with that aphorism is a rising tide, raises all ships. as long as everyone isn't sinking. And so the thing that everybody's
otherwise
working
a
on,
rising tide subsumes your boat and you sink to the bottom because your boat is riddled with holes because someone on a massive yacht's been shooting holes in it.
Right. And so I think it's a great aphorism. It is usually used for capitalist bullshit, but it's perfect in this situation because what the rising tide is the knowledge. It's all of it's the experience. Everyone is pouring their knowledge and experience and expertise into each other, into the industry at large, into anyone who wants it. And that is what is rising the ships, right? It's not money, it's not customers, it's not anything. Point. Yeah. It's you saying go ahead.
I was going to say, because in the capitalist thing, the rising tide is more money, right? If more money comes in, we all get richer. That's the basis of it, right? But you are so spot on with that, is that actually what is lifting us all is the knowledge. What's being shared is the knowledge and the best practices, which means that everyone is making better products. Now, better is however you want to define it. But like, people are making better, more professional looking, or more interesting, or more thorough, or whatever, more enjoyable, more fun products. That's the rising tide. And it just so happens that then also brings more money in because people want the good stuff, right? They want good stuff and they're willing to pay for it. And so you're spot on basically.
Springing off of that back a little bit, but very much on the focus of community, you talk about, you were talking about the very lenient but fair community design license. And it's a thing I think is so important, having seen, and God, I hope people remember this because it wasn't that long ago, having seen Wizards completely duff their changes to the OGL, seeing so many people come out with their own SRDs, seeing the rise of Orc, seeing people understand what a community license means, right? And then seeing, I think very specifically, incredible successes off of their community, works like Morkborg and Mothership, games that I think are sailing, not solely on the backs of their community, because obviously on their own, they're amazing products. But I think to discount the community for both of those products would be foolhardy, like Mothership specifically. But, what is your hope for the community design license? What is kind of your goal? I know it's probably a bunch of legalese, blah, 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 blah. We don't have to get into too nitty gritty. But I think it's been great to see, when we talked about SRDs, it's been great to see designers welcome, like loudly, people designing their own stuff for their games and hacking it in ways or building off of it to make their own games. What's your hope in that space for Mappa Mundi?
So for Mappa Mundi, to use the Morkborg and Mothership, I think they're on a spectrum, right? So like in terms of community licenses, so Morkborg is make your own game and add Borg on the end. And I love that, right? So Morkborg is like, so you've got Cyborg, and Pirate Borg is obviously a really big one. So many. I was trying to explain to my partner the other day, I was like, oh yeah, Cyborg, Pirate Borg, and I was just listing through them all.
Cyborg is so smart. Cyborg is so good.
I know.
God.
Yeah, really, really love it. So like for me, Morkborg and Cyborg and Pirate Borg, they are all different games, right? They're the same basis, but they're actually different games. Whereas Mothership, on the other side of the spectrum, it's Mothership, and then here are all these other things for Mothership. They're not like in play. And I know Pirate Borg and Cyborg don't replace Morkborg, but like they're standalone things.
You're not grabbing Cyborg and Morkborg, and you're like, okay, let's bring these both to the table.
Exactly. So I think with Mappa Mundi, Mappa Mundi, I don't think we can have Cyber Mappa Mundi. I don't think we could maybe have Pirate Mappa Mundi. But like I think Mappa Mundi is going to exist. I really hope, and I have no expectations that it's going to capture things in the way that Mothership did, because that shit's crazy. Like I love how many people are producing for it. But I think Mappa Mundi is definitely that end of the spectrum. What I would like to see is people taking the world and taking the system and expanding it and deepening it. So like one of the conversations we've had a lot, both Jeremy and myself, whenever we've been, obviously we've had these discussions a lot as a design duo and as a company as well. But we've had these discussions a lot when we're talking with other content creators and reviewers and critics and people like this, about like our like cultural consultation process and stuff like that. Because Mappa Mundi is like drawing inspiration from real world cultures, and so we've been really heavy on the cultural consultation, which has been absolutely vital. But one of the things that I've said to a few people is that what we have given you with Mappa Mundi is we've given you cups that are a quarter full. Mm-hmm. We've given you cups, and we want you to fill them in. So, like, we want you to fill them up with your own story. Like, Mappa Mundi is like, we give you blank maps so you can draw your own versions of these regions. Like, there are like official maps in the book, but like we give you blank versions of those maps. We want it to be your world. We're literally thematically and mechanically encouraging you to write the new history of the world, right? So what I would, like, in an ideal world, I would obviously love to see people making their own monsters and making their own creatures and like all this other, the kind of standard things that you would expect for a game that's kind of monster focused. But what I really, and obviously people writing their own adventures and stuff as well, like Jamie did with Deep Melody. What I really want to see is I want to see people getting into the nitty gritty of like the regions. I want someone to take Garu Goma, for example, which is our version of South India, and I want them to start making cities for it and making, like, talking about the tribal cultures and tribal groups that live there. I want people to take Leknitsa, which is our version of Eastern Europe. And like I wrote that one and I put like they've just transitioned into a period of republic, but there's still tension between like the peasants and the nobles and the mercenaries. I want to see people like write narrative adventures that play into the, like, take the stuff that we've given you and run with it. Mm-hmm. That's what I really want to see. I want to see people bring their vision of the world that we have given them to life. Like, really build on it. Get into the nitty gritty. Like, keep the creatures and stuff in there. Keep the monsters and stuff in there. Build your own. Put them in. Like, nowhere in Mappa Mundi, and in fact, thematically, it's quite apparent. This is a world that is waiting to be rediscovered and rebrought back to life and reconnected. The core rules, like the rule book, is like the core book is not an authoritative text. Like, we give you 3 monsters and 5 creatures per region. Who's to say there aren't 30 monsters and 500 creatures there? Like, start writing them. Start telling me the stories. Start publishing those stories and sharing them. That's what we want to see. We're giving people like a sandbox to play in, and I want to see the sandcastles they build. That's and I think that's more on the Mothership end. Like, Mothership is a lot of adventures and a lot of scenarios, and that's great, and I want to see that as well. But what I really want to see is people like leaning into the world building experience that Mappa Mundi is. Like, Luke from Merkmail wrote a review and he was like, this is a love letter to world building, and like, I couldn't have put it better myself. That's what I want Mappa Mundi to do, is to give people the foundations on which to build this world out.
Yeah, I love the idea of seeing, like you said, specifically being like, here's a gazetter of this city, here's NPCs and places and all of this. And that's just good narrative stuff. You don't even need to have any rules text for that. You can just say, here you go. I drew a bunch of monsters and creatures. Here you go. Use them.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally it. There's like, and because we don't do combat, we don't have stat blocks. If you want to create a monster, you need to have the name of a monster. Our descriptions are like 4 lines long, and the behaviors. That's all you need to have. That's well done. You've created a monster. Like, publish it, share it, let people go and find it, tell them whereabouts it is, and let them go and find it. Like, this is one of the things we wanted to do, was make it easy for people to create things for this game. Like, we've put the work in. Go and have fun with it. Go, like, here's all the toys. Go out and play with them and show me your creativity. That's what I want to see. And obviously, like I said, with the community license, we don't want a penny of it. We want you to, if you want to make it, give it away for free, give it away for free. If you want to charge for it, charge for it. Whatever you do, it's yours, and we will do whatever we can to help you promote that.
Yeah. And that's y'all taking a hand in promoting is part of why I love the way Mothership does it, and why I bring that up is it was such a thing for me. Somebody pointed out, I bought the Mothership box set. Someone pointed out they're like only 2 of the books in there are actually Mothership.
Yeah.
Like only 2 of the books that you bought in the product that you can buy that you're like, this is the game, are from them. And I sat and I looked at it, and then the deluxe set. And I was just like, that's actually amazing when you consider that, like, here's the product you can buy, and only some of it, roughly half of it, is stuff by the community and stuff by other people is incredible.
I love it.
I love in this new era that we find ourselves in. Like I said, designers being loud and being excited and being like welcoming with people making stuff and hacking stuff and more, I think more specifically selling stuff, right? Is not being afraid of people being able to make money off of these works, right? And that was the whole thing with the OGL was, whatever you want to say about it.
Money.
Right.
I was say, want that money.
whatever anyone wants to say about it, what I want to say about it was a way for a corporation to control the money that you could make off of your work.
Yeah. And steal it from your hands.
Right. And so
absolutely.
It's been great to see so many designers loudly and vocally excited and supportive. It comes back to the conversation. It just builds a healthier community. It builds a happier community.
Yeah, and
it gets more designers.
If someone is making content for a game that I designed and I'm selling, like, they're doing my job for me. Like, of course they should be getting paid for it. Like if I was going to hire them to do the same thing, I'd pay them for it.
Right.
Now, if I can't hire them and they want to do it anyway, of course they should be getting paid for it. It's not even a discussion, right? I think some people could potentially see like, oh well, if they're making money off it, that's a threat to me making money off it, which is so reductive and so short-sighted. If someone makes a Mappa Mundi adventure, as long as they're not reprinting the book, like which obviously they wouldn't do, and if they did, we'd be having words. If they're not reprinting the book, people still need Mappa Mundi to play that adventure. And if someone happens to write an adventure that someone's like, oh, I hadn't really thought about Mappa Mundi before, or I'd seen it, but I didn't really think it was for me. And then someone writes something that person's then like, oh my God, that's incredible. I have to play that. Then they come and buy Mappa Mundi. Great. Literally everyone wins in that situation.
Right. Everyone's having a good time.
Yeah. The person who's bought it is now enjoying the things that they've bought. The person that designed the supplement that got them to buy the thing is getting paid for it. And someone has bought Mappa Mundi. And we're getting paid for it as well. Like, it's again, like, things like the OGL were so short-sighted. I mean, like, expecting a corporation to think logically, passionately, or even vaguely like a human is obviously ridiculous. But it was so short-sighted. Like, what did they expect? Genuinely, what did they expect to happen? But the quicker that's dethroned, the better.
Yeah, and I am glad that I would have been shocked, but I'm glad that no one has made the same mistakes with their stuff.
This is the thing. There's the institutional memory, right? There's the institutional knowledge. Yeah. We all saw how badly they messed that up, and I think this is the thing. I don't know. Maybe there were people behind who were. Well, I was going to say maybe there were people who were thinking about doing the same thing, but most of the big players were running off of the OGL anyway. Right.
They had to for various reasons.
So they couldn't do the same thing. I don't know, man. I remember that was the whole. That all went to shit in a kettle, didn't it? That was pretty bad. It seems like so long ago now as well.
It does. It's weird.
It was only like, what was it, like January 2023?
Yeah.
Like, it's not that long ago.
It's 2 years. Like, that was only it's
COVID time, man. It's post-COVID time. Like, I can't make sense of any time anymore.
People struggle, but yeah, I mean, I get it. But yeah, it's what surprises me about, and I don't want to put sentences like this on like individuals, because the thing I always try to think about is 9 times out of 10, people are just trying to get through their day. They're just trying to get through their life. They're trying to have a good time. And, you know, very few times will I begrudge anybody or you know, criticize anybody for that. But what bothers me are any number of people or, you know, places meaning like websites, you know, critics, newsletters, that sort of thing, that all of that OGL stuff happened. And then we're just like, well, you know, the new D&D book coming out, it's really exciting. We're really taking a look. And I was like, they just threatened to destroy a large section of the community and put however many independent creators out of work or under more restrictive terms. Can we maybe, I mean, you know, there's some places that we're going to do it and they have to do it. And that's any number of, we can have any number of discussions about that. But there were people that I was like, you don't need to, you can just stop.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is the thing. It's like, I think the people that really struggled with it, right, are the people that are making a living through the industry, right? They're not publishers. They're not designers or publishers of games, but they are critics and content creators. And, you know, these are people who are like, they make they're earning a living making content about these things. And unfortunately, so I've got a long background in the tabletop wargaming space. Has its own big bad, which is GW, obviously, with its own, you know, huge monopoly. And like, unfortunately, if you want to make a living doing, like, talking about games in the TTRPG space, you largely have to talk about D&D, and in the miniature wargame space, you largely have to talk about GW. And it means that, like, and don't get me wrong, there are smaller content creators out there who are like killing it and providing an absolutely amazing service, never talking about D&D. And like, I've got so much time for them because they're incredibly brave, and they're like, they know they're like, this is the thing, when you have principles and when they are proper principles, like, this is a red line. So like, I have frequently hobbled myself in my life and made my life more difficult by refusing to budge from a principle. Like, this is something I believe in, it's unshakable, and it's a red line that I will not cross, even if it makes my life harder.
That's what makes it a principle, as opposed to an opinion.
That's what exactly, right? And like, I'm so glad you said that, because I have to explain that to people quite frequently. But like, I also know that I am far more direct and firm in these things than other people are, and I don't judge people for that, right? I'm not being like, I'm morally superior to you because I am more principled, right? That's not what I'm saying. But like, if people want to be content creators in the TTRPG industry, in the miniature wargames industry, the primary way that you do that is by talking about D&D or talking about Games Workshop. And you know what? Fine. If you want to do that, more power to you. You go and do it. It's not for me. It's not my kind of thing. I'm not going to be watching, but that's fine. Lots of people are going to be watching, which is why you're able to do this. What I think you used the term earlier on is one that I use quite a lot, which is an ecosystem, right? Like, we live and work and play in hundreds of different ecosystems all at one time. And the TTRPG industry is a series of ecosystems, right? Like, it's a rock pool. It's a series of rock pools, and some of them, sometimes they flood and we all merge together, but then we recede back, and there's like there's this community and that community and this community and that community, blah blah blah. Like, the TTRPG, I don't think it's controversial to say that the TTRPG industry would be healthier if 80% of people didn't just play D&D. Like, that would be grand, and I don't think that's controversial to say. It's controversial in some quarters, I'm sure, but like it's. But the indie, there's so much like beautiful, brilliant creativity.
There's so many games.
It's God. There's so many games. There's so many of them are amazing. Like, so many of them are amazing, and like, the more we can talk about it, again, we come back to the rising tide raises all ships, right? The better we can be at what we do. And that's not just design, right? We all have different roles to play, and some of us are playing multiple roles at once. But like, it's not just about how good the games are, but like, it's about how good you are at telling people how good the games are, and how good like content creators and AP people are picking and choosing the games they play and how they present them. We all have so many different roles to play to unleash this creativity, right? So you don't see people being like, I want to run Severance. How do I do that in D&D 5e? Is there a module for it, right? Like I was playing. I don't know if you've been watching Severance on Apple TV, but it's genuinely the best TV show I've ever seen in my entire life.
We're waiting to start season 2 until my wife likes to watch everything like kind of all at once. So we're waiting. I'm the same.
So I wanted to save it, but my partner wants to watch it week by week.
We're waiting until because I literally just looked at it last night. I looked up an article that was like, what are the release dates? We're waiting until roughly the middle of March so that there'll be enough episodes out that by the time we get caught up, the rest of the episodes will probably be out. So we can just kind of get through it as we get through it. But no, it's fantastic. Oh my God, it's incredible.
And I keep bringing it up because, I finally, for the first time in years, I've got like an in-person TTRPG group again, and it's great. So it's like me and a couple of other designers from here in Manchester. So it's me, it's Chris McDowell, it's Everest Burke from Button King Games, and it's Josh from Hive Mind Games. And it's like a beautiful group to play with. And our first session, we played, like Chris ran a session of Paranoia for us, and none of us had ever played Paranoia before. Chris had played it before, and like our mission was to deliver a sandwich, and it was just one of the most spectacular TTRPG experiences I've ever had. And as I got home, I said to my partner, was like, "How was it?" And I was like, "If I was going to run Severance, I'd use Paranoia to do it. Like I'd tweak it and I'd change the tone, but like I'd 100% use that system to do it." And like, I suppose, again, after the ADHD divergence, like the indie scene is so full of beautiful, brilliant, amazing creativity at so many levels that the more we can do as an ecosystem to push that out there and to like, I can accept D&D as the gateway drug. Like I can fully accept that. But like my concern is that most people who've never played a TTRPG before, if they've ever heard of one, they've heard of D&D, right? My worry is that system is so complex and so dense and so not fit for the type of games that so many people actually want to play, that it's actually not a gateway drug, it's a security guard. Like people come to that game wanting an experience and just bounce straight off of it and never come back.
Oh yeah, I agree absolutely.
We can't expect them to know about the richness of the indie community because how would they know if they've only ever heard of D&D and they've never played before? How would they know? But my worry is that they just rather than bouncing off and ricocheting into the indie community, they're like, oh, well, that TTRPG D&D isn't for me.
Right, and so okay, never mind. I'll just play video games, or I'll just play board games.
Exactly.
A friend of mine, I know a lot of people. I came to the TTRPG, I guess you'd say I came to the greater TTRPG scene through TikTok, right? I was into doing TTRPGs for a long time, but then sort of got into the greater scene via TikTok, and so I know a lot of people who make TikToks around TTRPGs, and a friend of mine is very loud and specific on like a crusade of people who say that D&D is easy to learn or an easy system.
It just isn't.
Right.
Like in no world
it's because it's actively disingenuous, right? Like it's actively, you're either wrong and don't realize it, or you're actively wrong for whatever your own reasons are.
And you're doing a lot of damage because if people are bouncing off of it and they're like, oh, well, it's my fault that I couldn't get it because apparently it's an easy and intuitive system. Like,
and that's his major point, is by telling people it's an easy system or even a middle system, what you're doing is telling them that, oh my God, like if there's a ton of all these other RPGs, they must be ridiculous. They're at least this hard, if not harder. Oh my God, what are you talking about?
Like Mappa Mundi's rules. Mappa Mundi's rules are 6 pages long. 6 pages. Like, like it's. And I see this quite a lot. Like there's a group on Facebook, like it's called "I'm begging you to play another TTRPG," and occasionally you'll see screenshots and stuff. Yeah.
So I came into it via Beggar Talk, which is the TikTok arm of that Facebook group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Shout out to Irene at Steve Jackson Games, who created Beggar Talk, a good friend of mine. It's
one of my favorite resources. Like I absolutely love it as a community space. But but like you see people posting screenshots in there being like, oh, my table, we've been playing D&D for 5 years, and they're entirely unwilling to even consider another system because they don't want to have to spend all that time learning another system. And I'm like, please, like you don't have to spend that time, because almost no other game is like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like no other game is as difficult to get into as that. Like I remember, introducing people to, because I've played my fair share of D&D, right? But the big thing for me is it wasn't my first system. It wasn't even my second or third system. So I came to it with like eyes unclouded. But like I remember sitting with people who wanted to play and who wanted me to run games for them for hours, just building their character. And like there's two ways that can go. You can spend hours building a character because the system is so beautiful that you want to do absolutely every little tiny thing. Or in the reality of this situation, there's I spent hours helping people make their characters, and no one can understand what the fuck was going on.
Because we had to flip to 7 different pages, and then, I actually forgot. Hang on. God, yeah. Oh, you need this skill, actually.
Yeah. And so, like, that's my real concern. Is like, how do we, like, is it even possible? And I'm never one to be defeatist or defeated. Like, but how is it possible that we break through this? Like, how is it that we?
Well, I think a big part of that, you mentioned earlier, a big part of that is games getting into stores. I think about my local store. They have a fantastic indie TTRPG section. Do they is half of their TTRPG system or like section D&D books? Yes. The other half,
of course, they've got to make a living. That's totally fine.
Right. They've got to sell books just as anything else. They got to keep the lights on. It's like how they sell a ton of Magic and Pokemon cards. It just is what it is.
Of course.
But the other half of that space is an incredibly rich, incredibly like feeling very purposely curated collection of fantastic TTRPG products. I love telling people they have an entire zine spinner for mothership zines. It's just full of mothership zines. Nice. and so I think, like, getting back to the institutional knowledge and sharing all of this knowledge, being able to get TTRPGs that aren't just D&D, Pathfinder, Call of Cthulhu, getting these games into stores, getting them into game stores, getting them into Targets, getting them into Walmarts. We can talk a lot about the politics of Walmarts and Targets and all of these big box stores. They have a lot of political problems, but it represents a market penetration that a lot of games, board games getting into Target was huge. It was a watershed moment in the board gaming as a hobby. And so now they're in Walmart, now they're in Barnes and Noble, now they're everywhere. You're tripping over board games. And we need to reach the same point, like you said. How do we get there? A lot of it is going to be TTRPGs getting in this space and being in front of people and being normalized to be in front of people.
So this is a really, really interesting point, and something that, again, so like Maz from Rowan Rook and Deckard gave a fascinating. So we have over here in the UK, we've got the Tabletop Industry Network, which is an excellent community space for anyone in the UK or beyond. Like it genuinely changed my life finding it. Like I discovered it I started going to the in-person meetings in Manchester, which is where I'm based, a year ago this month. Like I just went to one, me and Joel went to one last weekend. It was nice. People were celebrating the Kickstarter and stuff, but like we've been going for a full year and it was a really nice thing. But like Maz gave a talk about like getting into distribution in the US and like getting into retail stores in the US, because if you can believe it, the US, the idea of like game stores here versus what you guys have in the US is like orders of magnitude smaller. Like Maz was showing pictures of the places that they'd been, showing all these, like, you've got game stores that are as big as our like supermarkets, like in terms of floor space. Like it's genuinely mind-boggling for us here in the UK, like the level of retail support that exists. And like Maz was showing
to buy shit. That's
I get it, right? I get it. But like, I'm so glad that there are those like there are those spaces for TTRPGs, and like when you think about it, that the point about board games is really, really well made. But like when you look at the industry figures, the TTRPG industry is minuscule compared to the board game industry. Like we might be putting out a similar number of games every year. I don't know. You'd have to you could find these figures out. Like if you just think about Kickstarters and stuff, like look at how many board game Kickstarters there are versus how many TTRPG Kickstarters there are every year. We might be getting close to where they are, but in terms of like the market share that TTRPGs have is tiny compared to board games, and so I think we are in a golden age of indie TTRPGs, right? Like right now, the amount of stuff, the amount of excellent, brilliant, amazing, genre-pushing, like groundbreaking stuff that's coming out is amazing. And the more that we can do to help each other out, again, this is the institutional memory, this is the rising tide raises all ships stuff. The more we can do as an industry ecosystem to like help each other out, the more likely we are to get to that level. And like, it's hard enough making a living in board games. So you can then imagine when TTRPGs are orders of magnitude lower in terms of market share, how difficult it is making a living in TTRPGs. And I'm speaking from like personal experience, like immediate personal experience right now. But like I was talking with our consolidator yesterday, because I was like, obviously this is the first time we've ever done this. And I was like, right, you're going to be selling into distribution for us. How many copies do I need to get printed? How many copies do I need to get printed in addition to the stuff that we're doing for Kickstarter and our own direct retail? And he was like, I don't know, like maybe 300 to 500 copies. But he said something. He was like, if you're printing 3,000 or more books, like you're doing, that's like 1% of the TTRPG industry are printing that level of material in a print run. And like, this is a very real thing for me because obviously I'm watching this Kickstarter number go up and I'm trying to predict, I've got to predict stock levels and stuff. But when I was going out and getting our manufacturing quotes, I was getting it benchmarked. I was like, the minimum order quantity is normally 1,000 for like offset lithography printing. Like if you want to go to like Mixam or a print on demand thing, you can do one copy, but it's litho printing and it's not, it's a digital printing and it's not great.
Sure.
So obviously if you're, so we're doing offset lithography printing. So the minimum order quantity is normally 1,000. And so I benchmarked as I was like, right, I need to know the prices for 1,000, 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500 copies. And I was like, I am never going to order 2,500 copies. I'm like, because genuinely, like I was saying, I like with Mappa Mundi, we put ourselves in a position where we were pretty sure we were going to hit our funding goal. And we've thought maybe we'll double it. Maybe we'll get to £25,000, and dream come true if we hit 50. And now that we're approaching 50 and we've still got like 20 days left, I'm now starting to look at those higher order quantities, and like that struggle, that mental psychological struggle for someone who is trying to set up a business, one to pay himself, but actually first to pay other people. That struggle to be like, am I even going to be able to print 1,000 copies of this? Is like it's Titanic. It's like Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill. Thankfully, we've pushed it up, and this hill has a peak, and we've been able to push it up, and it's not going to roll back down at us. But like, even what I'm saying here, I'm having to be very aware of the positionality, because most independent creators are making zines or smaller games. They're not doing what we're doing with Mappa Mundi, which is a 220-page book and a 70-card deck, because like that's a stupid thing to do for your first project. Like it's just a stupid thing to do. But I've always been a risk taker and an idiot, so I decided to do it. But like, when you're talking about zines and stuff, obviously you're not talking about those levels of printing. You're not talking about those levels of numbers. But like everyone has those hurdles they need to overcome. Like I'm going to put a zine on a zine on for Zine Month. I want to raise £2,000 for it because I want to print it and also pay myself or get some new artwork and stuff. Like that's a huge task to get up. That's still a huge task to get around. And so like, not only is the industry really difficult to make it in, but we're all working there's different tiers within it. Like, are you making a big, massive book? Like, are you making a massive? So Mappa Mundi, I count as like a massive book. Like,
200 pages is a lot of pages.
It's a lot of pages. We've done a lot of work on it. Like, are you making something like that, or are you making like 100-page, or maybe 120 page, like, you know, I don't know. I don't even know what I kind of refer to that as, but like supplement level stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a whole game in and of itself, but is it like supplement level stuff, or are you trying to make a zine which could be, you know, might be 50 pages max, but it's more likely to be somewhere around the 30 mark? Those are all different. The same, we're all working towards the same end, but those are different processes that require different things. And like, I think we can forget, like, we look, you know, I'm thinking about like the bigger publishers out there. So obviously you've got like you've got your corporate, D&D are the big corporate behemoth, right? Then you've got the like, and when I'm saying second and third level here, these are not like moral ratings. I'm talking about like market share and like income and stuff. So obviously you've got D&D at the top. Then you've got what I'd call your second level ones. So you've got like Paizo, Modiphius, probably Evil Hat as well. Steve Jackson games, places like that. Like you're like that. I think they're more commonly referred to as like third-party creators, like third-party, you know, studios and stuff. You know, so like Modiphius, I think Modiphius has got like maybe 100 employees. Modiphius based here in the UK, but like 100 employees. That's huge for the TTRPG industry, but it's actually still classed as a small business here in the UK. Like a small business is anything below 250 people or something. Like, and then so each of these different levels, they've got different concerns and different needs and things that they need to kind of work out. Then you've got what I'd call like the big indies. So like for us here in the UK, Rowan, Rook and Deckard are like the model. Not only are they like the nicest people out there and who's designing an incredible, excellent game, every single game knocks it out of the park. But like for an indie like us, so for like 3 Sale Studios, our R&D are the model of what we can achieve. Like I tried to benchmark myself against like, this is what I'd like to be able to achieve. But then for someone putting out zines, that's not your benchmark. We're not your benchmark. I don't know who your benchmark would be in that kind of space. But like everyone, we have to try and like, in all our efforts to grow the industry and make the industry more sustainable and supportive, we also have to remember that there are people are doing lots of different things within it, and we need to make sure that the industry is like equitable and fair and supportive of all levels. It's why things like Zine Month are a good. Like Zine Month is a good thing. I wish Kickstarter did more to support it. Like it's a good thing. I love what you're doing, Matt. With like, I know that when we were talking, you were like, I've got all these people lined up I need to talk to about Zine Quest for the podcast. Like, I love that. That's great. Rascal News, they've just done a bit, you know, they've done like a collection of Zine Month stuff. Loads of AP performers and you know, reviewers and podcasters are all doing, you know, Zine Month stuff. I love that. I wish we could just do more of it, and I wish we were all getting paid more or anything to do this.
I'd love to get paid.
I know. Wouldn't it be nice? Wouldn't it be nice? We're artists, mate. All of us, and I'm not just talking about creators here. All of us are artists. We are all creating things, and we're all creating things about each other and in relation to each other. And like that's really beautiful. And we are like, I think that like the TTRPG space particularly is like really, it's something really special. Like as a phenomenon, it's something that's really special and something that people in it deserve more security and pay. For God's sake, just some pay. It doesn't even have to be loads, but just a start. Something as a start would be nice. But like, I suppose this ties into what we were talking about with like the 3 Sale, with the Mappa Mundi community licenses. That's something very simple that I can do to help people. I've made something. I hope to carry on. I hope the studio carries on making money off of it so I can pay my people, pay my team, eventually pay myself because everyone else eats first. And give people a foundation on which they can earn some money as well. And once they're there, they potentially start growing their profile. And maybe they want to do what we do. Maybe they don't want to do what we do. Maybe they want to do other things that other people are doing. But if I can help them do that, then I'd have done a good thing. Like I'd have done. Like, you should always try and do the best things you possibly can. In my mind, always try and do the good thing. And you know, I'd be the worst kind of hypocrite coming on and talking about all this stuff about let's grow the industry and let's build this community. Said, but don't touch my game. You're not allowed to do anything. Or like, you've got to give me 80% of your profit. Like, fuck that, man.
I drew
like,
this monster. Give me money.
Give me money. That's my monster. I think you'll find I drew.
Yeah, I think actually that's my monster according to this license right here. I think my lawyer and I would agree that is my monster. And there we go. That's the end of part 1 of my interview with George. Again, there will be part 2 already in your feed. I set these up to drop at the same time, so you'll be all set there. Part 2 focuses, again, more specifically on the game. So if you enjoyed this part 2 talks about Mappa Mundi more specifically in the mechanics and design sense. I want to thank George again for coming on. You can find all the links to George and 3 Sales in the show notes, all the places for me and the show in the show notes. Thank you again to everybody for listening, sharing, chatting with your friends. I've had a couple people tell me about how much they enjoyed the show, and that means the world. That's incredible. It's very cool to do a thing and have people be so excited and positive about it. So thank you for that. Thank you to everybody who's been reviewing the show on, whatever podcast platforms. I'm trying to get a better handle on looking at the metrics and stuff and understanding how all that works. So thank you to everybody who has been rating and reviewing and sharing. But that's it for part 1. Go check out part 2. Have a great rest of your day.